Hi everybody. This video is being filmed outside on my back deck, so I hope the lighting and the sound is adequate. It's difficult for me to see because the sun is pretty bright. This is a follow-up on the remaining contents from my urban worm bag when it did the giant crash. So for those of you who didn't see that video, the corner brackets on my urban worm bag cracked, causing the urban worm bag to crash to the ground, and the contents spilled out, and what was left had to be removed. And I put all the contents in a variety of buckets. Actually, it was these square cat litter buckets, and I had 6 of them. Well, from there, what I did is I dumped them all in this purple container, which has been used for many, many things. And 4 out of the 6 fit into there. So, what I decided was the urban worm bag was no longer going to be a multi-species bag. It was going to be dedicated solely to African night crawlers. Now, prior to the crash, the urban worm bag contained every species of worm I own, which is all of them. So the only way to get it to be African nightcrawler only is to take all of the contents. It was 3/4 full, and there was probably at least 10 pounds of worms, and manually separate the worms. Well, I've been doing that. And what we're down to is this container here, and each day I'm making 2 new bus bins. And what I've been doing is, since the African night crawlers are so obvious to me, they're very easily to identify to me. There's a couple of features I look for that right away I can tell what they are and what they're not. So I'm just pulling out the African night crawlers, I put them in a temporary pail, and then I'll bring that pail in later and dump it in the urban worm bag. And everything that's not an African night crawler, I'm adding to a bus bin, and these are going to be mixed species bins. European night crawlers and red wigglers. No African night crawlers, because they're going in the urban worm bag. No Indian blue worms. I have picked them all out. They are now in their own dedicated bin as well. And if I'm finding any as I go through, I'm taking them out. So I just want to show you what I'm working with. So this, I'm trying to get the piles down smaller. So this little bin, this is actually an old cat litter pan. I want to show you because I expect this to be, yesterday I just scooped out tons and tons of worms and threw them in here. So I expect this to be very populated in some area. Okay, let's see. So you can see, I hope, these number of worms. Now, 2 nights in a row, I had a possum come up and dine on my worms, so last night I had to cover them. But this is a little bit of everything. There's still the African night crawlers in here, and here's a comfrey root. They're enjoying that. You can see just how many worms. So I'm doing this, and I'll take a handful and put it on a 5-gallon bucket lid on my lap, and I will put the African night crawlers in one container, and all the other worms I will toss into a bus bin. Now this is just one. I broke the worms into smaller size containers yesterday to make it a little bit easier to work with, because while I'm separating the worms, I'm also taking the opportunity to harvest castings. So like, since I just came out here for today, You can see this little imprint. That's either a possum or a skunk from last night. So I'll take and scrape the castings off the top like this, because I'm leaving the worms outside at night. And then you see, once I get to the worms, like here, then I'll take these castings now, throw them in my bucket, and then I'll get to the worms and start separating the worms. Now I want to show you what's left in here. I put some weeds in here yesterday down in this corner, so there should be a good amount of worms. Yeah, you can see what I'm dealing with, and there's several mini containers that I've broken them into, but they're really healthy. They're doing really well out here. I mean, they're just in temporary holding containers, and I've been doing this since the urban worm bag broke. I've been working maybe 2 hours every day in separating the African night crawlers, moving out any Indian blue worms, and then the other worms get individually put into new bus bins. And I'm making red wiggler and European night crawler bus bins. I mean, I did water this a lot down in this corner last night when I put the weeds in, because the bin was really dry from being out in the sun all day. And you can see, I hope you can see, the sun is blinding me. It looks wet down here, but the rest of it is dry. I also wanted to make this part really wet because I wanted to draw the worms down to one end, because I am trying to harvest castings while I'm trying to separate worms. So it's really easy for me, at least, to identify the worms. So I'm not having any difficulty with that. The problem is there's 10 pounds of mixed species worms that I have to go through. And I've done maybe 4 or 5 pounds. I mean, this bin is the ultimate in worm balls. I've done maybe 4 or 5 pounds so far, maybe more. So yesterday I had I had a mango in here, down here, and a whole ton of worms flocked to it. So I picked up a big scoop and I put them into this container. I'm trying to find, there is a big worm ball in here somewhere. I'm trying to find it for you. Hold on, because this also has weeds in it, because this is the time of year where my yard weeds becomes their feed. There's a big giant pile of worms. Well, I guess there's a bunch of piles of worms everywhere I'm turning over. There's a pile of worms, as you can see. Very pretty. Oh, look, a chocolate worm. Yeah, I'm not too sure what exactly those worms are. Well, I'm feeling something gooey over here. Let's take a look. And what I'll do is just take, for instance, this handful, take it out. I have the cover to the 5-gallon bucket. This little blue cover right there. I'll plop the worms on it, pick out the African night crawlers, pick out the Indian blue worms, if there are any. There's very, very few left. And then the Euros and red wigglers get tossed into a bus bin. And when the bus bin becomes at an adequate capacity to be its own new bin, then I get another one and start all over. See, they're clinging to these weeds. They love the roots of the weeds. Look at this. So that's what I've been doing. Let's try to dig down a little bit more. I'll get you to look at some of these weed roots, because they really, really, really love the weeds. Let's see. I hope you can see this. But that's what I've been doing, so I'll give you updates as they make sense to do them. It's been time consuming, but yet interesting and fun. I've been finding a lot of cool worms, and different sizes and different color changes, and it's It's not something I wanted to do, but after the urban worm bag crashed and I decided to make it a African nightcrawler only bin, this is the only way I could do it. There's no way to do it other than to pick out the African nightcrawlers. So, this is going to take me another month because it's the prime gardening season and I can't dedicate all day every day to this. So it's just a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours at night, and then back to my other stuff. So I will give you updates, but this is where the contents are now of the original urban worm bag. And as for the urban worm bag itself, which is now the African nightcrawler bag, it too is living on weeds. Now I don't know if you're going to be able to see because let me put the flash on. There's actually grass growing in here. I plucked out some, I don't know what kind of grass this is from my yard, but I'm sure they're in the roots too. Sorry, video got interrupted with a phone call. As I was saying, as for the African nightcrawlers, they're doing really well. They're loving the roots of the grasses and the weeds that I have in here. Other than that, there's just bedding. I haven't given them any food of any kind. And this goes pretty deep. I'm not going to disrupt the whole thing, but I'll tell you, if you have yard weeds or clumps of the roots, they really go crazy for. And you're pulling them out, put them in your worm bins, because they really, really like them. See, no weeds over here, no worms over here. They are just crazy for these root balls, and I don't know what's in them. It's not even the grass. I had the grasses completely buried. That's why they look a little yellow, but they weren't going so much for the grasses. Well, now they're falling off the roots because I have the camera light on them, but they're loving the roots. They're definitely loving the roots, and they're getting nice and fat and plump in here. See if we can get this guy out. It's a juvenile, but still very, very pretty worm here. Let's see. Yeah, all different. And this is an all ages bin. This is not 21 and over. I date. Wow, look at this. This must be the hangout spot down here. They're really, really thriving now that they're in here. And it's interesting now that they're, the only worm type in here. I'll be able to do the experiments, and I'll know that it was only African nightcrawlers that caused whatever the results are. Trying to see if there's any in the front. Yeah, there's a really nice worm right here. Let's see if there's any up in the front. Oh, yes there are. Look at these guys. Around the edges, they seem to like the edges or the root balls. Here's a root ball. Here's a bunch of night crawlers. So yeah, everyone you're looking at here, I have hand plucked from the material that I just showed you out there. Every one of them. If they look a little light, it's because I have the flash on right now, because I'm in a dark corner. So look at this, a matted pile of grass and roots, and they're just loving it. They're like as wound up as the grass is. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, they really look off color with the flash on, don't they? But that's okay. You know what they are. So this is the current state of the urban worm bag, and there's a lot of Africans in here. I don't know what percentage of the worms I have yet to go through. The few pounds of worms are going to be African night crawlers. Maybe a third. So this bin is going to be really crowded, but this is the bin that can handle it. Of course, now I've disrupted the entire ecosystem in here. Hello, worm bracelet. All right, well, it's that time of day for me to go outside and spend a couple hours sorting worms and making a couple more bins and getting on with my day. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I know it's a little longer than the average YouTube video is recommended to be, but I wanted to show you many steps in what is going on right now with what was this urban worm bag and what is now the urban worm bag, and what is in between all the contents outside. So thank you for following along and watching, and thank you very much for your support. Have a great day.